She had spent her life chasing a dream, but in a single moment, the melody was silenced, leaving the world to wonder what could have been. The streets of Abuja were alive with the hum of city life, but for Teni, the world felt muted. Music was her escape, her anchor. With her guitar slung across her back, she walked the familiar path to Freedom Park, where she performed for tips every evening. Teni's dream was simple yet daunting: to save enough money to record an album. Her voice was angelic, her lyrics hauntingly beautiful, and her guitar playing captivated anyone who stopped to listen. But talent wasn't always enough in a city where connections mattered more than skill. Every night, she poured her soul into her music. Her regular listeners, a mix of office workers, students, and curious passers-by, knew her by name. Among them was Femi, a quiet man who always sat in the corner, listening intently. He never spoke, never tipped, but his presence became a constant in Teni's life. One fateful evening, Teni finished her set and packed up her guitar. As she counted her tips, Femi finally approached her. "Your music," he began, his voice trembling. "It's unlike anything I've ever heard." Teni smiled shyly. "Thank you. I'm just trying to save up for a studio session." Femi hesitated before pulling out a card. "I work at a recording studio. Come by tomorrow. I'll help you." Teni's heart soared. For years, she had struggled to break into the industry, and now an opportunity had fallen into her lap. She clutched the card tightly, tears welling up. "Thank you. I won't waste this chance." The next day, Teni arrived at the studio with her guitar. Femi was true to his word. He introduced her to the producer, who was immediately impressed by her voice. "You're a star waiting to be discovered," the producer said. "Let's record your first single." Teni poured her heart into the song. It was raw, emotional, and deeply personal, a melody about love, loss, and longing. The producer nodded in approval, already envisioning her future success. "Come back tomorrow," he said. "We'll finalize the mix and discuss your album." Teni could hardly believe it. For the first time, her dream felt within reach. That night, Teni called her mother, who lived in their village, to share the good news. Her mother's voice was filled with pride. "You've worked so hard, Teni. Your father would have been proud," she said softly. Teni hung up, feeling a deep sense of fulfillment. She had promised her late father that she would make something of herself, and now she was on the brink of achieving it. The next morning, Teni woke up early, humming the tune she had recorded. She decided to take a walk to clear her head before heading to the studio. The streets were quieter than usual, and a cool breeze rustled through the trees. As she crossed an intersection, lost in thought, she didn't notice the speeding car. The driver honked frantically, but it was too late. The impact was deafening. Teni's guitar flew from her hand, landing a few feet away, its strings snapping like her unfulfilled dreams. Hours later, the news spread across Freedom Park. Her regular listeners, the strangers who had become her community, gathered in shock and disbelief. At the studio, Femi waited for her, pacing nervously. When he received the call, he collapsed into a chair, unable to process the loss. Teni's unfinished melody remained on the producer's computer, a haunting reminder of what could have been. In the weeks that followed, a group of Teni's listeners organized a vigil at Freedom Park. They played her recordings, lit candles, and shared stories about how her music had touched their lives. Femi, devastated but determined, worked with the producer to release Teni's single posthumously. The song, titled Eri Ife, Testimony of Love, became an instant hit, resonating with listeners across the country. Teni's voice, though silenced too soon, continued to inspire. But for those who knew her, the success was bittersweet, a reminder of the dreams she had yet to fulfill. Life is fragile, a fleeting melody we often take for granted. Teni's story was a tragic reminder that tomorrow is never promised, And the dreams we chase are as delicate as the strings of a guitar.